On the morning of July 12th, 2024, Matthew Restelli woke up in his home outside of Temecula, California. He woke up in a great mood because the day earlier, he had convinced his wife, Kathryn, who goes by Kate Restelli, to come home. You see, 3 weeks earlier, she had taken their 2 children, Cheyenne and Steele, and left the home in California and driven to her mother's house in American Fork, Utah. Her mother is Tracy Grist. He had made arrangements. He had arranged a rental car for her to drive home. He had put money into her, by her I mean Kate, into Kate's account so she could finance the trip to come home. Little did he know that that agreement to come home was a ruse. She had no intention of coming home. Over the course of the morning of the 12th, Matthew learned from Kate that she couldn't rent the rental car that he had arranged for her. So she couldn't come home. Thinking she still wanted to come home, he went to work. He put new tires on the family truck. He obtained a travel permit so he wouldn't get pulled over. He replaced the starter in the car. And by approximately lunchtime on the 12th, he began the 12 to 10-hour trip to American Fork, Utah. Over the course of that drive, he spoke to Kate several times. We know this because there were several calls recovered from Kate's phone that you will hear. You hear the content of those calls. Because of the content of the calls, it likely wasn't a surprise to Matt that when he showed up at 10:06 p.m. to Tracy Grist's home, that the interior lights were off, that the door was unlocked, and that there was nobody there. He entered the home as he had been instructed to do, took off his shoes at the entryway, or his sandals, and within mere moments of stepping into that home and removing his sandals, he was shot 7 times by his brother-in-law, Kevin Ellis. And he died at the foot of the stairs while Kate and the 2 children were upstairs. Now, the events of what happened that day and the weeks leading up to it is what brings you here today. The judge just read to you the charges that Miss Tracy Grist faces, namely the murder of Matthew Restelli, conspiring to commit that murder, and the obstruction of justice. As you listen to, it's the state's job and burden to prove that she committed each of those crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a burden that we willingly bear. Your job is to pay attention. Take notes. Take notes to the evidence that you will receive. All evidence is going to come to you through this jury stand. Through witnesses, through exhibits, digital, forensic evidence. It will all come to you through that stand. And as you listen to this, I want you to consider the following questions. Did Tracy's actions lead to the death of Matthew Restelli? Did she reach an agreement with her daughter Kate, or Kathryn Restelli, and her son, Kevin Ellis, that Matthew would be killed? And did she did she take actions that prevented the investigation or prosecution of what happened that night? As you're thinking about that, I want to kind of put in your minds an instruction that you'll receive at the end. So just like you received instructions here, you'll get another packet at the end that contains all the law that you need. One of those instructions is going to discuss a party to the offense. Someone is a party to the offense if they aid, encourage, solicit, or participate another to commit a crime, and that crime happens. So keep that in mind as you're listening to the evidence. Over the next several minutes, I'm going to give you an overview of how I expect that the state's evidence will answer each of those questions in the affirmative. Now, remember, what I say in this opening is not evidence. It's just a roadmap. Okay? It's not going to include everything that you're going to hear, but it is the state's expectation of how the evidence is going to play forward coming from that stand. The relationship between Kate, actually this may be helpful to you. I'm going to refer to a lot of the people on this, and so it'll be helpful for you to refer to this and say, okay, that's where this person fits in. Trust, you will hear this evidence again. This is just a roadmap. In January of 2024, the relationship between Matt, the deceased, and Kathryn, or Kate, his wife, had become very strained. The couple argued frequently. They argued about Kate's infidelity. They argued about their dire financial situation. But either way, it was bad. In January, the date's in the bottom right corner, Kate reached out to her mom, saying, at this point, I don't know if Matt will be going to Disney. We've been fighting so much. I want out. To which Tracy Grist responds, just say what you need to. And then, I just told your husband, don't mess with my child. I want you to know I mean that. And then a little bit later, I'll just drive 9 hours and strangle him. Appeared to be mere hyperbole at the time. Things improved enough that in February of 2024, they did go to Disney. Matt joined the entire Grist family as they went on a Disney trip. You will hear that the family procured several Apple AirTags to place on the children so that they wouldn't lose them in Disney. By May of 2024, things had deteriorated again. Kate tells her mom, I hate my life, Mom. I hate that I have kids with Matt. Similar concerns were relayed by Kate to her sister, Carolyn Fisher, who you will hear also lives in California. In June of 2024, Kate tells Carolyn Fisher, I hate him. How do I get out? To which Carolyn responded, do it one step at a time. Talk to Mom, Tracy Grist, about a storage unit. So that's what she did. Kate procured a storage unit, began to slowly move things out of the family home that she wanted to keep when she left. You'll hear that the plan was for her to leave at the conclusion of a Las Vegas trip that she and Matt were going to take in mid-June. Diane Restelli is Matt's mom. She's here in the courtroom today. You're going to hear from her. She knew about the dire financial situation that Kate and Matt were in. And knowing that now was not the time for a Vegas trip with their situation, she canceled the trip. This forced a shift or a change in the plan for Kate and Tracy. Tracy obtained a credit card and sent it to Kate, a credit card that Matt couldn't track and didn't know about. On the 18th of June, she arranged for a rental car for Kate and the kids and scheduled it for the 20th. On the morning of the 20th, on the 16th, you also start to see lengthy conversations between Tracy Grist, Carolyn Fisher, Rachel Jorgensen, and Kate. A lot of activity. You're going to see that come forward. During those conversations, on the 16th, Tracy Grist's web search history shows that she searched, first, Utah gun law registration, and second, Utah shoot break-in. She also started looking about establishing residency in Utah, the divorce procedures. And as I said, 2 days later, she arranges the rental car, which would be set for the morning of the 20th. On the 20th, in the early morning hours, Terrelyn Fisher texts Tracy Grist and asks if she can see the air tag that she had switched the name to Truck. Tracy confirms that she'll look. That same day, this is the 20th, Kate is going to meet Terrelyn at the storage unit and at the rental car agency. Terrelyn tells her, I used the Apple AirTag, use some Gorilla Tape or something else to stick it somewhere in the truck. Okay? At the bottom, you'll see she expressed some reservations about this. Not sure she wants to do it. But on the 20th, she drives the family truck into town, leaves it at a shopping complex, and decides last minute, actually, you know what, yes, I am going to put the AirTag in there. She places it in a bin of trash on the floorboard of the truck. Picks up the rental car, goes to the storage unit, fills it with whatever she wanted to take, and begins the drive to American Fork. No warning to Matt that she was leaving. That same day, you will see that the family created a Facebook chat that involved Terrelyn, Tracy Grist, Rachel Jorgensen, and Kate, that allowed them all to monitor the location of the AirTag. And they discussed frequently its location. During Kate's drive on the 20th, Tracy Grist asked Terrelyn Fisher to draft a text to send to Matt to explain that this was just a breather. She does that, and Kate sends it as drafted to Matt. Kate arrives to the home of Tracy Grist the evening of the 20th, enters the gated community where Tracy lived, and set up shop in Tracy's home. Over the next several days, Matt gets over his initial anger about Kate picking up and leaving with the kids without warning. Part of this is because he was being led to believe that this was just a breather. This was just a temporary vacation. Tracy Grist, you'll hear, went so far as to call Diane Restelli and tell her the same thing. They just need a breather. They just need some time. The entire time that Matt is being led to believe that this is a breather, the family's monitoring him. By this point, June 26th, Kevin Ellis, who also lived in the home, was given the ability to monitor the AirTag. We see on the 26th, Kate asks him, what day are you coming back? Wondering for Olaf. Olaf is a nickname that they gave to Matt when they wanted to talk about him. Friday, late, he says. Okay, cool. And then he assures her the tag is still active. Really? She asks. He responds on the 26th, if I have to rush back, I can make that happen. Evidence will show that this was never intended to be a breather. Kate was never coming home. She was never bringing the kids back. On the 29th, Tracy, talking to two family members, the family members ask her, how's Matt taking it? Not that you care. She says, I want him to show up. He still thinks it's only for another week. On the 2nd of July, we're now into July of 2024, Tracy asks Terrelyn Fisher to talk to Kate. Tell her what to say to a lawyer. Kate sets up a consultation with the lawyer. She sets it up for the July 11th in the evening hours, or late afternoon hours. During this time, during that roughly 10-day period between while waiting for the consultation, Matt's still thinking this is a breather, starts to push for her to come home. And On the 11th, the morning of the 11th, but during that same time that he's pushing her to come home, Kate's having conversations with Tracy Grist. And Tracy started making passing comments about harming Matt. She went so far as to bring Kate into the laundry room and show her a knife that she had in a rubber glove. And Tracy told her, if he comes, either myself or Kevin will shoot him. And we'll put the knife in his hand to make it look like self-defense. On the 11th, contrary to Tracy Grist's desire that Matt come out, Matt tells Kate, I don't want to drive out. And Kate relays the same to her mom. On the morning of the 11th, Matt doesn't want to drive out. So instead, he arranges a rental car at the Enterprise around the corner. Now this is a message that Tracy sent to Kate, telling her what to say to Matt, which she does. So he makes that arrangement. He puts money into her account. Tells her tomorrow, July 12th, Enterprise, pay in person with a debit card. Her response, cool. She's excited. And then $600 into your account. Later that day, Kate has a consultation with a lawyer. This consultation was recorded and sent to Tracy Grist. A friend who knew that she was going to have the consultation on the 11th reaches out to Kate and asks her how it went. She responds, honestly, I'm bucked. She learned in that call, and you'll hear it, divorces on her terms, staying in Utah with the kids, wasn't in the cards. So that takes us to the 12th. Matt still thinks she's hopping in the rental car. Matt still thinks that she's going to start driving home that day. She continues the ruse. Good morning, getting up, getting moving, excited for today. And you'll see text messages between her and her mother from the 11th. That was never going to happen. She was going to fake a sprained ankle, or she was going to go ask the rental car agency and pretend like she can't rent the car. He's excited. I'm over the moon. Can't wait to hug and kiss you all. Now, the day of the 12th, you are going to see a lot of digital evidence. A lot of conversations between Tracy Grist, Carolyn Fisher, Rachel Jorgensen, and Kate. I'm only going to go through a couple of those. From Kate's call log, early morning of the 12th, she calls her mom and talks to her for 4 minutes. Immediately after that, she has a phone call with Matt Restelli. Then, around here, she has a conversation with Kate. She's having a text message with her mom saying, it would be more believable if you go to the rental agency and tell them and do it in person. So she does. She talks to Kevin, says, hey, I need to go make my story more believable. Can you watch the kids for me? She does that, comes back, and has another conversation with Matt at 8:55. These next 3 calls with Matt are recorded. They were recovered from Kate's phone. You'll hear them. You'll hear that she tells Matt they won't rent her the car. Matt's still thinking she wants to come home. Starts to talk about options. Cars that he could borrow. Other arrangements. Sending more money so someone else could rent the car. Options. All these are denied. Forcing him to have to drive out. And you'll hear her convince him not to borrow a car, not to get one from anybody else, but to bring the truck. The truck that had the air tag in it. But he's worried. I need a starter. I still need a travel permit. So he makes those arrangements. By 9:15, he calls her and says, I got the permit. I'll go into town, get the starter. Kate immediately texts her mom, he's going to drive out. Tracy Grist says, I'll call you. They do indeed have a call. 11:39 for 5 minutes. At this point, you're going to also hear the next 3 phone calls that were made between Kate and Matt. 11:55, they talk. And at this point, things change. You hear Kate encouraging him. You're going to come in, right? Help me pack? Matt, knowing the relationship with Tracy, kind of tries to push it off. Well, can't you just be ready? Can't we just throw it all in the truck? I won't even turn the car off. I won't even turn the truck off. She insists. And ultimately, he agrees. As the afternoon approaches, the 4 sisters, or the 3 sisters and Tracy Grist, are continuing to have extensive conversations. At 12:48, you'll see a call between Rachel Jorgensen and Kate Restelli that lasted for about 20 minutes. In the middle of that call, Tracy pops in on a group call for 7 minutes. After this, you see a call between Tracy Grist and Kevin Ellis at 2 p.m. She responds to Kate at 2:07, I am meeting Kevin for sushi. While there, she's continuing to text Kate, and you'll see those eventually. But she also, at 2:13 p.m., while waiting for Kevin to arrive at sushi, searches, this is Tracy, searches the It's Happening meme. Remember the call with Rachel Jorgensen that happened at 12:48? At 2:18, Rachel Jorgensen begins a series of 3 phone calls. The first is to Aurora France. Aurora lived in Tracy Grist's home with Kevin and Kate. You'll hear that she made arrangements for Aurora to leave the home and come to her house in Ogden that night, despite never having been there before. Five minutes later, immediately after getting off the phone with Aurora France, she calls Jacob Trujillo, Tracy's son who lived in the home with them, and makes sure that he has plans with friends that night and wouldn't be home. She then immediately calls Tim Ellis, Tracy's other son, who lived about 4 minutes away. Now you'll hear from Tim. Tim will tell you that prior to this date, they had talked about Tim coming over if Matt were to ever come out, to be a peacemaker, keep the peace, because he was friends with Matt. You'll hear him say that at 2:25, on the day of the 12th, he was told not to come over. With the house, you will hear that after sushi, Tracy Grist and Kevin Ellis returned to the home, had a conversation with Kate. They kind of went their separate ways that afternoon in the house, just kind of doing their thing. But what you'll hear is that over that time, several physical arrangements were made, or preparations were made to the home. As you walk into the Grist home, as you enter the home, to your right is a living room. In that living room, there's a fireplace. And directly in front of you, as you walk into the home, is the hallway leading to the stairs. Now, the toys for the children were traditionally kept in front of that fireplace in bins. Pretty messy, as kids typically are. All of those toys were cleaned and removed and placed in the office. As you walk in, there's a couch immediately to your right, a fabric couch. You'll hear that a blanket was placed over the arm of that couch, fully covering the fabric. A mesh screen, a magnetic mesh screen that's typically on the front door, was removed to allow easier access for Matt. And as the night wore on, Kate continued to talk to Matt to make sure he showed up in a good mood. The final call you'll hear from her, or between the two of them, is at 8:13 p.m. less than 2 hours before he arrives, where Kate again tells him, and make sure you're coming in, right? To help me pack. After that call, there's some text messages exchanged, and Kate or Matt, concerned for the oil dripping from his truck, says, when I get there, we should put cardboard under the truck for oil drips. 8:09, okay, I'll get some ready. And then about 9 o'clock, remember, Tracy Grist lives in a gated community. Kate sends him the gate code. And then a picture of the cardboard that she had laid out for him to park over. You'll hear that Rachel Jorgensen throughout the day was monitoring Matt's location. At 10:01 p.m., she sends a series of 2 text messages to 2 people. One to Tracy Grist saying Orem, followed by keep an eye on Find My, the Apple app. Then, seconds later, to Kevin Ellis, Orem, keep an eye on Find My. Metadata will show that this message was read. At 10:06 p.m., surveillance footage will show Matt Restelli arriving in the truck, parking over the cardboard that had been laid out to him. And the evidence will show that he arrived to a dark house. The interior lights were off. The door was unlocked, as he'd been told that it would be. And so he entered. Took off his sandals at the edge of the tile where the tile meets the carpet. And the evidence will show that in the dark living room to his right was waiting Kevin Ellis with a gun. And he shot Matt in the chest, the side, the right forearm. And as Matt turned from looking at the living room to go down the hallway, he was shot 4 more times in the back. You will hear evidence from the neighbor that they heard these shots at 10:07 p.m. Concerned, they reached out to Tracy. Is everything okay? You'll see that text message at 10:08. Tracy didn't answer. So at 10:09, the neighbor calls 911. You'll hear that call, reporting that 2 minutes earlier, at 10:07, they had heard what sounded like either firecrackers or gunshots. They couldn't be sure, but they didn't think it was fireworks. They thought it was gunshots. 6 minutes after the neighbor calls, 8 minutes after the gunshots are heard, Tracy Grist calls 911 and reports that Matt had been shot. Now, in that 8 minutes, the evidence is going to show that Kevin left the living room, went and placed the gun in the front on the countertop, and that a knife, and that he was overheard to say, "Be careful, he might still be moving." And that a knife, that same knife that was shown to Kate in the laundry room, was placed in his hand. Now, you'll hear 4 pieces of information about this knife that are suspicious. And first, it was placed in his non-dominant hand. Matt's left-handed. The knife was placed in his right hand. Second, the blade of the knife, the sharp part, was facing towards Matt. And the spine was facing away, meaning the grip was backwards. And you'll see images of this. Third, it was the same arm that had been shot in the forearm, through the skin, through the tendons, through the tissue, through the bone. All things required for grip strength. And fourth, you will see evidence that the blood stains are consistent with the arm being moved after his death. Law enforcement was dispatched based on the 10:09 phone call. This becomes important. You'll see that 2 minutes into Tracy's call at 10:15, when she called at 10:15, She's surprised because she hears knocking on the door, because law enforcement had already been dispatched, and they got there. Law enforcement comes in, and at this point, Kevin had resumed his position in the darkened living room to the right. And pay attention to what he says on the body cam when law enforcement walks in. He says something to the effect of, "That guy had a knife and I," before his voice is drowned out by law enforcement. The investigation unfolded. You'll hear the varying stories between what Tracy Grist says happened that night, between what Kate says happened that night, between what Kevin Ellis says happened that night. It will become clear that they did not account for the neighbor hearing the shots at 10:07 and calling law enforcement. The day after the murder, Kate has a phone call, or is supposed to have a phone call with Diane Restelli. You'll hear those phone calls. You'll also see that immediately prior to that call, Tracy told Kate, "Don't say anything. It can be used against Kevin." No details about what happened. But Tracy Grist has two lengthy phone calls with Diane Restelli. Pay attention to what she says happened. Over the course of this trial, you're going to hear from several members of law enforcement. You're going to hear from a DNA expert. You're going to hear from a medical examiner. You're going to hear from a crime scene expert. You're going to hear from several members of the Grist family. You're going to hear from Rachel Jorgensen. You're going to hear from Tim Ellis. You're going to hear from Tara Lynn Fisher. You're also going to hear from Kate Restelli. Now, Kate will be your first witness. She's been transported here from prison. She's in prison because she pled guilty to murdering Matt Restelli, conspiring with Kevin Ellis and Tracy Grist to commit that murder, as well as an additional charge for the discharge of a firearm that resulted in serious bodily injury. Now, to be sure, Kate, in exchange for providing evidence and information to the state, she received a plea deal. A plea deal that will result in her having the eligibility of parole sooner than she otherwise would have. As with all witnesses, your job is to weigh their credibility. Okay? And you don't check your common sense at the door. You still know when people are telling the truth, when they're not. You weigh her like everybody else. You can choose to believe all, some, or none of what she says. But note that the vast majority of what she says will be corroborated by digital and physical and forensic evidence. Finally, you will hear that both Kate Restelli and Kevin Ellis tried to talk Tracy Grist out of this, but she wouldn't be persuaded. You will hear that they failed to persuade her to not go through with this, but they also failed to stand up to her. As you can see from this roadmap, there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of times, there's a lot of dates. The timeline will become clear as you hear it again, but please take notes. You will likely only hear it once from this stand. The evidence that gets displayed here will go back with you for you to be able to review, but please pay attention and take notes. At the end of this, my colleague, Mr. Pomeroy, is going to stand up and give you a closing argument and present to you the additional evidence, present to you the conclusions that should be drawn from this. And after he's done, the state's going to ask you to retire back to chambers and to find that Tracy Grist is guilty of murdering Matt Restelli and conspiring with her son and her daughter to commit that murder, and then of obstructing justice by planting that knife. Thank you.